I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
It was right around the same time that he was telling me we can't talk about sex that I went, this just isn't working. It's just not working. And I knew Morgan had been in non-monogamous relationships in the past, or at least one. And so I broached the subject.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. A request before we get started: if you know a couple who would be great guests for us, or if you have a moving or insightful story about a relationship, we would love to hear that story and we would love to know that couple. So please email me at host@together.guide with any suggestions. Thank you. Now on to our show. The very idea of non-monogamy seems to polarize people. Out of over 50 episodes that we've posted and nearly 150 magazine articles on our site, only a small handful have been about non-monogamy or polyamory. But we get more comments and emails about those postings than everything else combined. Some people ask why I only write about polyamory. Is this a polyamory site, they wonder? Am I advocating for open relationships? Others insist that non-monogamy isn't addressed often enough, that it's where we're all headed and we need to open our eyes. Some readers tell us that non-monogamy is a sin, and others say that it's the human ideal. I say it's neither. Open relationships are just relationships. This program and this magazine are about relationships in all their forms. Together stands for the simple truth that relationships are challenging no matter how they're structured, and that we all have something to teach one another about making them work. That said, I do believe that the non-monogamous have a lot to teach us about relationships, and that's simply because they're engaged in exponentially more relationship dynamics than the rest of us. And I've written an article on that topic in our magazine this week. It's called What the Monogamous Can Learn from the Polyamorous, and it's available on our website, www.together.guide. And that brings me to our show. Our interview today isn't exclusively about non-monogamy. In fact, the open elements of Ray and Morgan's relationship are probably the least significant component of what they're up to. But it does make headlines, and it's part of a larger conversation about exploring and sharing our individual truths. Doing that is fundamental to healthy partnerships, and yet it's something that we all seem to studiously avoid. What we have to learn from Ray and Morgan is how to develop the courage to be honest first with ourselves, and then with our loved ones. The truth will out, my friends. Better not to let it fester. So with that, let's go to part 2 of our interview with Ray and Morgan.
I'm going to confess something now that will probably give a little more context to the sex thing. I never really wanted to get married because I never thought I'd be very good at it. Just the whole you and me forever no matter what thing. But I would read these articles or I would read these books, and these couples would say this thing over and over again. I kept seeing it in different pieces of literature, and it was, we've been together for insert certain number of years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and the sex is just starting to get good. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? What is that, just starting to get good? And it occurred to me somewhere in my 20s that if I wanted to understand that, I had to find a partner. And part of getting married was that I want to understand what it means to have sex with the same person for 10 or 15 or 20 years and be able to say, it's just starting to get good. That's fascinating to me.
Well, what are you learning?
Well, I think the cycles is the first thing I've learned, is that the ebb and the flow. I'd never been in a relationship long enough prior to this partnership to understand ebb and flow, and that usually I was always like the downturn was the end. Well, this is the end. And then I realized when you are in it for the long haul, it's not the end. It's just a birth and a death and a birth and a death, and you're going through these stages. I think as you get older, you're able to recognize more birth-death cycles in your life. When you're younger, it's just different. I'm still deeply fascinated by the idea of 10 or 15 years learning something new about my partner. But I have learned in the time that we've been together, he still surprises me. He still has stories I've never heard. He still uses words I've never heard of, which is...
You mean just in life or sexually?
Everything. Yeah. He still surprises me. And so, you know what? I think it's fully possible that in another 4.5 years, he'll still be able to. Because he's a complex person and I'm a complex person. And we bring a lot of that, like, mental and physical complexity to our relationship.
Initially in our relationship, and to some degree now, maybe a little less now, I was reluctant to talk about sex in a meta conversation. I was very inclined to talk for sex, like sexy talk, but talking about it seemed like a subject that, why do you have to talk about it? It seems like, can't you just have it? Right? But I think what I was missing was that, because talking about sex can be so difficult, and so your fears are there, your desires are there. It's such a can of worms, and it is sticky and kind of weird. And then you realize your partner really didn't like it, and the time you were doing that thing, and it's like, really? And then it's a real opportunity to potentially feel badly about yourself. So why talk about it if you're going to feel badly about yourself, or confront feelings of inadequacy or whatever. But I think, at least in this down cycle, we were in bed a couple days ago, and just dealing with what the nature of this down cycle is. And I kept asking Ray to tell me what's there, like essentially volunteering to open up the can of worms and talk about sex. And we had a good conversation about it. And I felt that what is starting slowly, because I'm certainly still a little bit trepidatious about this, but what's starting slowly to happen is that I realized that the intimacy of that conversation, as sticky and weird and uncomfortable and facing my own kind of bucket of fears, the intimacy of that actually is interesting, and I think that laid the foundation for us to reconnect this morning, for example. I feel like, because I'm afraid sometimes that if we talk too much about it, it'll be rattling around in my head for too long. It won't get completed. I'm afraid of this, you're afraid of this. Like, there's something about that, the intimate conversations, that has always been a bit more difficult for me. But I'm starting to trust that the more I talk, the more I can share, the more I can open up a little bit, because I'm not super open or super that sharing person. The more I can do a little bit, it does pay dividends, and it does feel good, and things do get completed, and cycles do shift.
When you say the intimacy is interesting, is that what you mean, that the intimacy pays dividends?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you didn't expect us having a conversation about sex to lead to intimacy, because he fought me on it. We went through a down cycle, and I kept trying to talk to him about it, and he just wouldn't. And finally he looked at me and he said, "We can't talk about sex anymore." And you understand, you might as well just cut off my tongue. I want to talk. I want to share. For me, talking is intimacy. And I did not talk about sex for 6 months.
You accepted his request. I thought you were going to tell me you said no, but you actually tried it.
Well, because trying to have the conversation with him was so difficult that I just finally said, fine, we're just not going to talk about sex. And we went through a weird phase where we were having sex maybe once or twice a week, but it didn't feel the way it used to feel. It was a different cycle, not up or down, just different. And then he was on the verge of leaving for Vietnam for 2 months, and we'd been married for 9 months at that point. And I just flat out told him, I said, we're having this conversation the night you leave before Vietnam, because if we don't, I'm going to cheat on you while you're gone. I'm so unhappy, and I'm going to be here alone and deprived, and I just know myself, and I have, I'll have an opportunity and I'll be angry at you, and bad things will happen. I just know I could see the writing on the wall. I said, so we're going to have this conversation, because if we don't, bad things are going to happen, because you're going to be gone for 2 months. And
Did you really mean it? You'd cheat on him?
I'm going to confess fully and openly here that I have never been with a cheater. I have never been with a partner that I haven't cheated on, except for this partner. It's just something in my DNA. I don't know how to explain it. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't do it. I still do it. And it's not for lack of loving a partner. So I know thyself, right? Yeah. Know where you're vulnerable. I knew where I was vulnerable. And I knew that I was not in a good headspace to have him be gone and have this hanging out there. Yeah. And for the record, my partner has never not been clear on this fact about me. Like, I have been upfront from the get-go.
Hey, Christopher knew that was like your weak spot.
He knew that was my weak spot. And we had the conversation. And I didn't say that to threaten him. I just had to speak my truth again. It was like, once again, no strategy, no plan. Probably could have done it the night, not the night before he left. Probably could have done it a few days before that. But I just it was like the dam broke and the truth and the words all came out. And we were up till like 2 a.m. just talking. I just wanted him to understand how I was feeling, and I wanted to understand how he was feeling, and I just wanted to connect with him verbally, because by not talking about this, I was feeling this like slow distance from him, and he was getting further from me, and my desire to connect is very high.
Yeah, and I will say that having been through that time, I realize there's maybe 20% less resistance to having conversations about things that are difficult, especially sex, which is, I think, the most difficult realm of conversation for me.
Is sex?
Yeah, probably. It's a rough one. So I feel like, having again been through the cycle, having had successful conversations, having seen things actually resolve, I become a little bit more open to continuing to have those conversations and not so close to them.
So that conversation was where you first had that realization.
No, I think it's ongoing. The more we talk, the longer we're together. I don't think it was definitely a bit of an eye opener, like to see that help shift the conversation. But I can't claim that was became a bright new shiny penny after that. Yeah. I'm still working on this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me change directions a little bit. Sure. I want to go back to the cheating thing.
Okay.
Because it's fascinating. A lot of people cite infidelity as their number one deal breaker. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, Chris, if you do, first off.
No, it's not a number one deal breaker for a number of reasons. It isn't a deal breaker. It would be if Ray were to cheat on me, it would be a cause. I would be angry, definitely angry, very angry. It would be a cause for significant concern and serious conversations about, are we doing the right thing? Is this right for us? Is there a deeper problem we're ignoring? And if it became a consistent pattern, it might be cause for breaking up the relationship. And Ray knows that. Ray knows that if she cheats once, I'm not necessarily going to divorce her. But if it's a consistent pattern, it's going to cause a lot of tension that ultimately probably will undermine the relationship. But on the other hand, we are in a monogamish relationship. We allow ourselves opportunities to play that are not just with us. So we play with other people as well. So that's a big, it's a way to take the tension or the...
it's a release valve.
It's a release valve. Thank you. It's a release valve for that desire to experience other people, to experience other energy, to experience a level of newness. And the interesting thing about it is that it brings newness back to our relationship, to our sex life. It's not just, Ray goes, we go together and we play with somebody else, and then it's like, then we come back to our thing. Our thing changes as a result of having built into our relationship certain rules and certain openness, and it feeds back to us. It adds juice. And this is an experiment, like the way I like to think about it is that this is an experiment. Right now, the experiment is working. It's fun. It provides juice. It doesn't take energy away from us. It has not yet provided any big breakdowns. And as long as the experiment is working, is providing us something, then we're going to continue experimenting. And with the knowledge that there may come a cycle in our relationship where it will feed back negatively and it will be draining energy from the relationship. If we have to be processing, feelings constantly about what we're doing, I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? I don't have the energy to be constantly processing my relationship at that level. So the experiment may shift and we may go back to a completely monogamous relationship in the future.
How does cheating get defined now?
It's a secret. It's something I keep from my partner or he keeps from me. And I mean, we tell each other pretty much everything. And that's the reason why we can be together is there's a huge high level of trust, a level of trust that I've never experienced before, but also a high level of disclosure. So cheating would be a secret. Or
it's breaking the rules.
Well,
we have set rules.
You've broken rules, and I didn't call you cheater.
True. But true. But this is a facet of the equation.
Fair enough.
And so we when we go to a play party, or we play with another couple or something, we do have rules around what we can do, what we can't do, what we're open to or not, and those rules always have historically always changed according to what serves us and the other people in the moment, or when we discuss it the day before, how we're feeling, where our relationship is at.
But like with any contract, you just both have to consent to the change, and then you've changed it.
Precisely. Yeah.
Which is why I'm loath to say that we are swingers or open or poly, because we're none of those things, because it evolves and changes, and we go backwards and forward. We could say, you know what, this play party, you're allowed to have sex with someone else. And the next play party, we might say, you know what, I'm just not feeling like I want that kind of experience, so let's stick to, second base, whatever that is. Or let's just stick with people that we've already played with in the past. I'm just, energetically, and that's why it shifts. And because it shifts, I'm very hesitant to give us a label outside of monogamish or non-monogamy.
Yeah. Was it because of exploration around the question of why you had cheated in the past that you two started to consider the possibility of a monogamish relationship?
Well, I guess technically we were never monogamous because I'm bisexual, and I always had open door policy. I'm allowed to sleep with women.
Since the beginning? Since
the beginning. Well, pretty much from the beginning. I don't think we ever... That was always pretty easy to...
She would extend the same, but I wouldn't take it.
To men. Honey, you can go make out with any guy you want to, but he's straight. So, but, quid pro quo. So I guess technically we've always had some kind of non-monogamy. I'll caveat that by saying in the first 3.5 years of our relationship, I only exercised that once or twice because an opportunity arose. I was not pursuing it. And frankly, for the first 3 years of our relationship, I didn't feel any real... what I'd call itchy feet. Like, I'm ready to go wander off and explore new humans. It was only when I started feeling that way, and it was right around the same time that he was telling me we can't talk about sex, that I went, this just isn't working. It's just not working. And I knew Morgan had been in non-monogamous relationships in the past, or at least one. And so I broached the subject. So I knew for him that it might not be a stretch. It would be a stretch for me. And actually, the 2 months that he was in Vietnam, I read The Ethical Slut. I read a ton of books, not books, articles, I should say. I kind of, gleaned the internet to understand jealousy and how I might feel, and really applied myself to it. I was writing about it a lot in a journal, and just felt like that was the right path for us. It seemed right. And I knew that of the two of us, I was really the one that was at greater risk of discomfort. He'd done it before. I hadn't.
Was that what you discussed that night before he left?
No, it was about getting us back on track.
Oh.
And then while he was gone, I took the time to do a lot of research. And
But why did you decide to do that research after that conversation? Did he know?
No. No, I don't think you knew, did you?
No. I was doing my own kind of research.
Right. I have two sisters who are polyamorous. So being exposed to that lifestyle was something that I was very aware of. And through some twist of ironic fate, my sister had been in a polyamorous relationship with one of his best guy friends in the Bay Area for years before we met, and they're still actually seeing each other now. And so I was already exposed to the idea, and I just knew that monogamy was just not going to work long term. I knew that in my heart of hearts. I also knew that bringing it up prematurely in our relationship would destroy it.
And there's a significant reason for that, at least on my side, in that my prior partnership broke down partly because of betrayal of trust in a non-monogamous situation. So I had very little belief that that path was one that led to a lifelong partnership. And I didn't have much evidence of people around me who tried that path and been successful at it. So I was just, as a scientific type, I was just quite skeptical about it. And, now to have my partner broaching the subject with me about going there again, all of the skeletons came out of that closet, and I'm like, oh my God, this is happening again. Another woman who needs an open relationship in order to be happy. How does this continue to find me? And it took a while for me to really understand that what she was bringing up and what she was, what she was interested in creating was something that wasn't a polyamorous situation where you have multiple parallel partnerships. She was interested in something that, she called monogamous, which actually made a lot of sense to me because I'm not challenged. I don't find the sexual part to be that challenging. I think we're sexual creatures. If my partner plays with another man, I'm not completely, sent into a tizzy about it. If she were going on dates with another man, and like creating a parallel relationship, that would be the thing that I would find completely unacceptable. So, and that's where the prior relationship that I had broke down. It was, my bright line was sex is okay, but parallel relationships are not. And hers was, she was fully a polyamorous person, and she felt that parallel relationships were the path
In that old
for
relationship.
her in the old relationship. So, there was some betrayal of trust around that question that caused that relationship to break down.
Right.
So I was really concerned that might be repeating, and to be able to define it as monogamous, and to really get down to here's what we're open to, here's what we're not, here's what we're doing, here's what we're not doing, gave me the trust, and also to be married to this person gave me the trust to say, okay, let's try it, let's experiment with it, let's see how it goes.
I love how non-monogamous relationships come in so many stripes. I was interviewing a couple, was it yesterday, who was non-monogamous and saying that they couldn't imagine starting non-monogamy in the midst of an of a relationship. They thought that would be the greatest, most difficult possible challenge, and it was sure to end in failure. And you two are saying the exact opposite.
And for the record, I can't imagine starting a relationship that's non-monogamous. You need to, like, for me, build the foundation, build the trust, be enough for each other. So then you know you're enough. And to chime off of what Christopher said, he is the love of my life. I defy any man to walk through that door and try and prove to me that they are a better match for me. Like, he doesn't exist. There's only one guy out there, and it's him. And so for me, play with other people, it's just feeding. I'm a bit of a gypsy. I like change. I like movement and evolution. And I mean, I changed offices the other day, and I was like high for like a week. Oh, I'm in a new space, and I'm looking at new things. And I literally moved down the hall, but I was so excited because I just like change. And so if we're going to buy a house and live in the same city, and I'm going to have the same job, and I'm going to be sleeping with the same guy, something has to feed my desire for change. It's either, put my gypsy, robes on and head out the door for a year or two, or find some space to have an outlet for this desire for change and newness. And I think this is a great place for me to get that feeling without having to run away from my life, which has happened in the past. I've just upped my life one day and just changed it all because I just need that.
Yeah. I'm curious how your religion and Jewish culture fits in with non-monogamous relationships.
Best play party we ever went to was at an Israeli couple who's Jewish. It's so part of the culture. Like, I'm shocked at how many couples we meet that are Jewish and non-monogamous. I don't know what it is. I'm not meeting them through the Jewish community. I'm meeting them through the play community, and they're all Jewish. I mean, a good chunk. I don't know what that is.
I'm fascinated by how many non-monogamous couples there are in this world.
Most people don't talk about it.
And they don't tell me when they come on the show.
Oh.
I find out halfway through the show. It's been at least a third of our total couples.
Huh.
But I digress from that conversation. So do you have any guesses as to what it is about Judaism and non-monogamy that seems to be at least, if not compatible, then not incompatible?
Well, what I will say is, and I will speak to Reform Jews because they are the most liberal, and that's what we would probably be bracketed into. Reform Jews, generally speaking, don't believe in God, I've discovered. They have like a very spiritual vibe to them, but they are Boo Jews, they're Buddhist Jews, or they're Jew plus and they're Jew minus, and they just kind of pick the flavor of the week, you know what I mean? And they're very oriented to community and connecting with a lot of people. Like, that's really part of the culture. So I don't think they have any fear of like hell and damnation, and there's no like religious statutes about it necessarily. So I think that helps, that you don't have a really puritanical vibe. Like, Jews aren't Puritans, like they're like the first religion. Like they write in their, ketubah how frequently you're supposed to have sex with your wife. Like, if you go back and look at Jewish lore, women's rights were very big in Judaism. I don't want to dive into that, but my point is, Jews recognize the importance of sex in the relationship. The Kabbalah covers whole sections about sex. And so when you have a culture that doesn't demonize sex, and in fact, at a certain age, you're supposed to learn about the elevated mystical side of the religion, which covers off on sex, the Kabbalistic beliefs. It just creates a different environment than don't talk about it, only do it to have babies, puritanical, God will judge you conversations.
And I'm gonna say
Sure.
also that, we're also part of the Burning Man community, and these are tight communities. These are people, you get to know people over periods of years, and it's a very different thing to play with what we call randos, strangers, right? Versus somebody you've met and you know well. I know the people that my wife has played with. I've had dinner with them. And there's something that works for us about that because obviously things happen. Trust is occasionally misplaced, but we believe that if somebody knows us and knows our relationship, they're much more likely to respect it or to not disrespect it. And that's sort of what we're seeing show up. People who know us together are not trying to poach, because also, their community keeps them in line too. If somebody poached my wife within one of these communities, I think there would be tremendous fallout. Tremendous sort of social pressure. There's a certain understanding in these groups of people that of what the place that play takes, and we're all, or at least for the people that I'm referring to, we're very relationship driven. We all believe in having amazing relationships and supporting each other and having great partnerships and supporting each other when things aren't going well. And there's an ethic there, almost unspoken, that exists within community that, maybe if you were just talking to a rando, you just, the ethic is there, but there's no one to hold them to account. If they decide to be, if they are starting to poach,
I feel like you should clarify poaching.
Poaching?
Yeah. Like what you mean by that. You just kind of dropped it into the conversation.
Well, poaching is that person that will use play as an excuse to, grab your partner and run off with them, create a parallel relationship, and then ultimately take them away.
Right. And what I was saying earlier, challenge someone to walk through the door and be better than my partner. That's what I mean. Like, no one's poaching me. If I'm leaving, if I were to ever leave, it would be of my own accord. Not because I met some guy who I think is better than Christopher. There is no guy better than Christopher. It doesn't exist. Like, I know that. And we've spent 4.5 years making this relationship fantastic. I wouldn't even consider risking the possibility of maybe, I can't fathom. I just can't fathom there's some dude out there that's going to blow my mind, convince me he's my soulmate, and leave my, like, it just doesn't exist.
Well, now you've challenged me.
Oh.
So, well, let me say this. It seems to me like the threat of infidelity and the fear that monogamous people who haven't thought through these issues have of non-monogamy is that the infidelity and non-monogamy all feel like threats to the sanctity of the relationship. And what that really means is that something is now happening that's going to end our relationship. And I love you and I don't want our relationship to end, or I need you. For whatever reason, I don't want this relationship to end. Now you're threatening it. And so you're kind of responding to that fear in the statement that you're making right now, which is nobody could take me away from him. But, this is a wide world, and there is somebody out there that you're going to like more than him in some way or some other way.
Sure.
And I get you're making a commitment. That I see. That's clear, and it's lovely. I mean, that's what marriage vows are. But that threat is possible.
Yeah.
I suppose.
I feel that I'm maybe more aware of that fear than she is in my mind stream. I notice it keep coming up here and there. It isn't a very intense fear, but it's there. And but I also, on the other hand, just because something makes me afraid doesn't mean that it's something I have to react to. It's a sort of take a Buddhist approach to it. Yeah, I have fears. I have my little box of fears, and they pop up periodically. And okay, I'm feeling this fear, I'm feeling that fear. But I don't. If I don't feed the fear, I don't give it any extra reality. I recognize it as one of my box of fears, and it'll ebb and it'll flow, it'll go away, it'll come back. Fears have their own sort of cycle to them, and this is such sex and openness. It's such an area of growth and that the juiciness, the growth, the discoveries that you can make are more interesting than the fear. I don't want to live my life in reaction to fear all the time. I believe that a life that comes from extending trust is more worth living than one that is in response to fear. And I like to be able to continue to extend trust to my partner. It's active rather than reactive. And
Well, this makes me think about the compersion versus jealousy concept and
Sure.
dynamic. And
Sure.
I'm not very well versed in it, but as I understand it, jealousy is what it is. We're familiar with that. Compersion is kind of the opposite. It's the joy that you find in your partner's pleasure.
Yes.
And the thing about jealousy that I keep hearing people who are on the cutting edge of this question that you two are exploring is this notion that jealousy isn't a root emotion in and of itself, but that it usually is a container for other emotions or a cover for other emotions, and that the work, when you're in a non-monogamous relationship, or maybe for anybody, the work is to understand what is your jealousy, what's at the core of your jealousy, and to bring that out. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're referring to about the fears?
No, I don't feel that my fears are based on jealousy per se.
Or the other way around?
Yeah, would you ask that again?
Yeah. Well, let me ask it this way, really specifically. Do you experience jealousy?
Yes.
Okay.
In small ways.
Yeah, okay. And when you experience the jealousy, do you have a practice of trying to understand it?
No, I have a practice of just feeling it for what it is. Usually it's a wave of emotion that passes, a wave of clenching that passes through the body, centered in the chest, and it goes away. And usually there's something to express. Like there was one brief time, my wife, at that time my girlfriend, was at a party with one of her exes, and he cornered her and had a long conversation with her. And I felt that. I felt that, that energy, that emotion that, if I were a different person, might have had me want to go pound the guy. But my practice is just to sit with it and feel it for what it was, just a tight clenching, and just notice it, how it changes and how it moves. Maybe it changes, maybe it doesn't. And then to tell my partner, yep, I felt some jealousy that night or a couple hours ago, and actually she was really cute in the way she responded, and she was very, obviously she apologized for that I might feel that way, but that was the first time I'd ever expressed that I felt jealousy to her. So she felt that, for us that was a little intimate moment because, she was the one that usually experienced jealousy and was always talking about it and always, fessing up to it. But this is the first time I get to fess up to feeling it.
My jealousy, to your question, is rooted in a fear of abandonment, something that goes way, way, way back for me, and is the reason why I went to therapy, because I recognized that my jealousy, and I wasn't the jealous girlfriend that would like scream at the boyfriend, it was just in my head, and it would freak me out, and now I recognize this pattern of fear of abandonment, and the reason why I really don't experience jealousy anymore now at all, even when I see my partner with someone else, is because he has so thoroughly convinced me beyond any shadow of any doubt that I could ever possibly imagine that I have no reason to be jealous, that he will not abandon me. He has so inspired me with trust and faith in our relationship. It is because of him and his embodiment of like being just a good person. I just don't experience it. And I'm sure I will. I am sure in the future it will happen, and I hope, and I like visualize myself taking a step back and going, why are you feeling this way? Feel it in your body, experience it. Because for a long time, I used to relate to jealousy like, how dare my partner let me get into a situation where I feel this way? It was about them. How dare he talk to that hot blonde and make me feel uncomfortable? And so I had to experience jealousy. And now I understand that it's so not about them, that jealousy is my own experience. I learned this from Christopher, and that I can choose to do with it what I want to. But if I understand the root of it and I choose to not let it own me, and I have seen him having sex with other people, and I can't say I've experienced compersion, but I also haven't experienced jealousy. It's a very neutral place for me right now. I desire to experience compersion. I think our second play party, we were with this couple, and this guy was like really going to town on this girl, like really hot sex. And his partner was sitting like right there watching them, and the smile on her face and the genuine pleasure that she was emoting out just watching her partner really have a good time, including the woman. I was like, man, I want that. I saw it, It's like when you see the thing that you want and you go, that's like my life journey, is to get there. Where I'm not even being pleasured by anyone else. I'm not trying to hook up with anyone else, and I can just watch my partner and enjoy that. Because I think compersion in sex results in compersion everywhere. It's almost the gateway. Like when you can do that, you can do anything. And I want that. And I think the thing that kept coming to my mind when I really was struggling with this decision, understanding my sexual needs, my need for change, and understanding that in order to not cheat and to be faithful, I needed this outlet. Wanting to experience compersion, it all just collided. That's how it really collided. Was trying to meet my needs and be able to be in my partnership.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss in the issue of non-monogamy?
Sometimes I feel like people look at our relationship and they go, oh, you guys have cracked the code. You figured it out. And I always want to look at them and say, yeah, he lets me fuck other guys. That's it. That's the code. But no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that for some couples, that's how you crack the code. Not all couples. And I want to explain to them, yeah, we cracked the code. I have a partner who elevates me every day and makes me want to be a better person by example, not because of something else. I want to be better because he leads. He leads as I really think he's the better person in this relationship. And that's the code. And it's just not what people expect it to be.
Those seem like two different things.
How so?
I thought one thing you said was it is important for us that I be able to fuck other guys.
Yeah.
And that was the code for us.
Yeah.
And then what I was going to ask about was underneath that is you guys had to do work to find out what you guys needed.
100%.
And that is the code. But then you said another thing, which is that he's the better person in the relationship and he leads by example.
He's not sanctimonious and he is not self-righteous. He is more patient, more long-suffering, deals with me, and I am a volatile person, and I'm not an easy person to be around at times, and I know that. I mean, I'm not the dish throwing type, but I can be mean, and I'm not, but I can be, and he's not. I've had to learn to be more gentle, because if I tell him he's done something wrong, he won't look at me and say, well, you're no prize yourself. He won't, slam back. He goes, oh. And he like internalizes it, and then he thinks about it, and then he's like, am I really not a good person? Like, he thinks that. He doesn't flip the narrative. And I've realized that I have to really, 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 really be very, very precise in what I say, because he will beat himself up for things he doesn't deserve to.
And this is interesting because part of my evolution is, because that's the way I'm tuned, but part of my evolution is when it needs to get dished back, learning to dish it back. It actually really does feel good, because there are plenty of times where she's saying something, she's attributing some problem to something that I do or don't do, and really my job, in less more subtle way, I should be telling her to fuck off, because it's what she needs to do. It's just there's half of what she's talking about is usually right and half of it's bullshit. So there have been a couple of times when in an argument I've been able to tell her that, and so that's my own version of right. Evolving as a person.
And then I calm down and I understand things on a new level, but he is just so willing to hear what I have to say, even if it isn't necessarily true, and I'm making up some story because I'm upset about something. He doesn't make me feel bad for feeling the way I feel, even if in the moment it's volatile, and even afterwards when I'm like, you're right, I was totally wrong. I'm such a volatile, emotional person, and he's just so grounded, and it makes I don't know.
There's always some truth to what she's saying. Even there's always something there to say, oh, okay, there's something interesting there, something truthful there. Even if all the coding, the emotional coding of it is intense and unpleasant, there's always some reason. And I'm curious about what the reason is, and I'd always like to be a better person. And if I'm, continually doing something that's pissing her off, I want to know, and I'm willing to look at it and whatever. So usually the way my process is to go right for it. Okay, what is that thing? What is that thing that I can look at? And I trust that she'll do the same thing. After usually her process is after she's calms down 50%, she starts thinking a little bit more logically and realizing, oh, okay, here's my culpability in the situation.
Right.
But there's never any culpability in the heat of the moment. It's always me, completely 100%. So then I own that, deal with it, and an hour or 2 hours later, she'll start to see how she fits into that picture.
And I uncover the kernels of truth, which have had huge layers around them. So the process for me for fighting is to get to those kernels of truth. But it takes usually me blowing up, him dealing with my blow up, sometimes blowing up back at me, but it's rare. And then me coming down about 50% so I can analyze what took me there and then kind of dust through, the wreckage and be like, oh, this is the part, this was the fight, but this is the part that actually we need to talk about. And that's why I think he's the better person, because I am volatile, and I think it takes a certain kind of guy to deal with a woman who really loses her mind sometimes when she's angry, and I definitely lose my mind sometimes.
Well, guys, what a fantastic interview. Thanks for being on the show. I love to finish shows with a quick game of this or that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we'll start easy to warm up. I'm going to ask the question and then have each of you answer it separately. Okay. Chocolate or peanut butter?
Chocolate.
Peanut butter.
I always think that's going to be an easy one that everybody in the line does, but this is all over the map. Chocolate or peanut butter? Why? Any reasons? Any deep?
I'm allergic to chocolate. It's very simple. I prefer the taste of chocolate, but I'm allergic.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Mm-hmm. Actually, no, you have to tell them the white chocolate story. Wait, can we tell you one more story?
Yeah.
Morgan's allergic to chocolate. And he would always sulk about it. He was like, this thing. And finally I asked him, I'm like, what is the thing that you are allergic to in chocolate? Because I am research girl. And he tells me the ingredient. I'm like, all right. And I start Googling it. And I'm learning about it. And I discover in about 3 minutes that the thing that he's allergic to, it's on a ratio of 1 to 100 in white chocolate. And I looked at him and I said, babe, you can have white chocolate. And he went out and bought a bag of Dove white chocolate the next day. And he ate just one just to see. And when he realized he wasn't allergic, he ate the whole frickin' bag. And so sometimes I tease that's the reason why he married me, because he discovered he could eat white chocolate.
You figured it out. The key to his heart is through his stomach.
Right? But anyway, okay, back to this or that.
Okay. This or that. Would you rather be able to resist bullets or read minds?
Oh, read minds.
Read minds.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I've never been shot at before.
As long as I can turn the mind reading off and on when I want to.
True.
Because I don't want to be able to read minds spontaneously, because it's really helpful not to know what some people are really thinking.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Okay. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
The old Star Wars.
The old one, yeah.
Okay. I think that's implied.
I don't know.
No?
You didn't like the J.J. Abrams reboot?
If I have to choose between the entire breadth of the Star Wars work and the Star Trek work, I would choose Star Trek. But if I'm going classic Star Wars versus classic Star Trek, I go Star Wars.
Star Wars is quirkier.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
I like her getting nuanced about this.
Although that I gotta agree with you, that middle era, that George Lucas mid-range Star Wars stuff is just it's like, come on, couldn't you have let somebody else take the reins? Okay, so second to last question: enlightenment or $1 billion?
Oh, enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And last question: if you had to either live forever, or like infinity, or die in the next 5 minutes, which would it be?
Oh, I'd live forever.
You say that as your facial expression is like, duh, why wouldn't anybody? But look, she's thinking about it.
I think I'd choose 5 minutes. I would. No, and living for, I mean, this sounds really nerdy, but if you've ever watched the not the Hobbit, but the Tolkien trilogy, there's the elvish love, and there's this really tragic part of the movie where they show her future, and she falls in love with this man, the king, and he dies, and long after the world has ever remembered his memory, she will still be there grieving him. Like, that's how I imagine living forever is like. It's like tremendous loss for the rest of your life, and yes, tremendous joy, but I don't know that I want that loss, and I am genuinely curious about what is next over the horizon. Like, what happens next? Even if it's nothing, that is like my other curiosity. What's sex going to be like in 25 years from now, and what's next
After death?
You got it. Even if it's nothing, those are my two big questions in life.
I'm curious too, but as long as I don't have to become a vampire, I'll take I'll take it.
That's it for our interview with Ray and Morgan, folks. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard on our show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It does make a big difference when you do that. Please also consider donating to our Patreon campaign. You may know that we're on a mission to crush shame, and every penny really does help. You can find our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/together. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out via one of our platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both at together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. Our producer is Charlene Goto. Our web designer is Courtney Munna. Our art director and my one and only is Aubrey Pick. She's waiting for me on the couch. I'll be there in just a second. Thanks once again to my guests, Ray and Morgan. Guys, I really do appreciate the honesty and the transparency. It takes something. That's all for today, folks. See you next time.